Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I had a really interesting interview a couple of weeks ago with I don't know exactly how you say that, a mature model. Hanya Kizemchuk is her name. And I got an unbelievable amount of positive response that someone with gray hair that is a little bit advanced in age would be a model and a top model on magazine covers and things like that. And that she was really inspirational to a lot of people. And I got a lot of comments about her life and who is she and what is she all about and stuff like that. And so I ended up chatting with her and found out that she's got a really interesting story, a personal story, and more importantly, a really interesting attitude about relationships, particularly relationships for those of us that are in middle age. And so I thought it'd be interesting to invite her back and chat a little bit about this. So Hanya Kizemchuk, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. Yeah, we've had some interesting chats for sure.
So you wanted to talk about relationships and some of the advice that you've got. And it really came from, this sense that lots of people, I think, asked me. And then, when I mentioned it to you, they said, well, you said that, well, people ask you as well about why someone so attractive, so outgoing, so personable, model in mature years would be single and would be happy being single and wanting to stay single. Why? Why are you single and happy being single?
So I think that, and it is really one of the number one questions I do get asked. So I'm glad that we're having this show. Thank you. I would say to you that when I reflect back on these questions, I try to take it way back. And in my case, I go back to how I was raised in an ethnic home. My parents, both Ukrainians, came to Canada after the war. So they were of that era where, the man was in charge and the woman evolved around the man. But in our household, it was not like that. Our household was really pretty much a 50-50 partnership. And that is how I was raised. And the common goal that my parents had was really about raising their two children, educating them, building a business together, and giving back to the community. So that's kind of my foundation of who I am today as a woman. So I would say to you that as I was growing up, my mother imparted a couple of tidbits of wisdom on her young daughter, which really stuck with me. One of which was she basically said to me that if you choose to marry, and it was not any kind of a pressure that I should marry. Let's remember, my parents would be in their 90s if they would be alive. So we're talking 50 years ago. The mentality was very different at that time. So she said to me that if you choose to marry, you make sure that you marry for love and you never marry for wealth. In other words, don't seek that out. We were living in this kind of Cinderella era. So she was saying to me that there is no Prince Charming. You go out and you make sure that if you're going to marry, you're marrying for the right reasons. And
good advice. Even today. It's good advice even today.
Even today, 100%. And it's really what has stuck through me, with me rather, through my whole life. And the second most important piece of information or wisdom that she gave to me was, you make sure that you build a career, become your own woman, and always have your own money. And in doing so, it gave me the ability to stay authentic to my wants and needs as a person. So it wasn't that I needed to be with someone for support or their wealth. It's because I wanted to be there. And that is something that in my generation, women were raised with this mentality of, and still are.
Find a man.
That, yeah. So, they're looking to the man to provide. And I've never had that. I don't even know what that means. I still don't know what that means. So it allows me to move forward in a way that stays authentic to myself. And it's what's given me my happiness. So whenever there has been, and I've been married twice, if the relationship did not work, and clearly it didn't, we were able to separate properly, amicably. In the beginning, of course, it's not always amicable, but in time you do work things out and you move forward within your life and you grow a life that is important and wealthy to your own self-heart. And I think that when women talk to me today, they're trying to find their way, whether they are newly separated, perhaps a husband has passed, perhaps a husband has met somebody else and has gone for someone much younger. It's a struggle that's very real to women who are in my age category. And there's this worthlessness, this feeling of being invisible that so many women are feeling.
Seriously, worthlessness?
Yes, because think about for a moment that women of my generation were raised to evolve around that guy. I mean, he was the bread and butter. He was the support. He was everything. He walks out the door with some woman who's 20 years younger, and she's left there not having any skill sets. Typically, in today's age, she has no skill sets, and oftentimes now her financial means have been reduced. And
she walked away with half the wealth.
Sorry?
She walked away with half the wealth.
Well, that sounds so great, doesn't it? But, a lot of times if she has had no input as to how that wealth was created and where that wealth is, then she probably doesn't have a good idea of what half that wealth actually means. In other words, sometimes, and oftentimes more than sometimes, the wealth is hidden. And so she finds herself fighting for that, which she thinks she has. And in fact, it's probably not there. That's not always the case.
But it's astounding that you would say that she ends up having this sense of worthlessness. That's sad.
Yeah, it is sad. And that's why we're having that discussion. And that's why women are looking to me and saying, well, why is it you have found happiness? And the truth of the matter is because I'm happy on my own. I have, and I think we talked about this a little bit with you, is that I have built my own little island, and it's my happy bubble. It's a bubble that I have filled with happy people, loved people, my family, my friends, my trusted, closest people who have common goals and feel the same way about life as I do. In order to cross this threshold, for me to open this door to somebody, you have to come wearing your big boy pants. You are not a construction site that needs to be renovated. You're ready, set. You're emotionally evolved to the level where I am. So we're coming together.
Oh, so you're saying you're still open to it. It's just that the guy's got to be really spectacular.
He has to be, I would have to think spectacular for me, yes. Because I want to have somebody spectacular, don't you? But
yes.
It really, yes, because why would you not? You have to come offering me some kind of joy that is missing in my life, and my life is filled. So you're coming to me with something that is not there, not necessarily missing, and it's definitely nothing to do with a need. It's something about perhaps a want, right?
We're going to take a break for some messages and come back in just 2 minutes with Hanya Kizemchuk and talk a little bit about her background so we can put this conversation in perspective, her experiences, what makes her her. And then we're going to widen it out to talk about the applicability to other males and females in her category and frankly, my category. So let's take a break and we'll be back in 2 minutes with Hanya Kizemchuk. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I've got a really engaging young lady to introduce you to tonight. Hanya Kizemchuk is her name. She is a mature model. She's proud to be a model even in her 60s. She's got gray hair, and she's proud of her gray hair. And she's single, and she's proud of being single, and she's happy being single, and she wants to tell people a little bit about what she's thought about relationships and herself, and sort of the evolution of her and what she needs in a man, if that's going to be someone that's going to sort of interest her. And I think it's an interesting conversation because a lot of people, after divorce or after the death of a spouse, end up being in a very similar situation. I think, Hannah, to put everything into perspective, it would be really helpful for everyone to understand a little bit about who you are and what your sort of background is. You told me the story about, I think it was at age 20 or something like that, you being on the runway in Milan as a model. Tell me a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so when I was growing up, my father had basically one rule, and that was, well, he had many rules, but the strictest was to get an education. So after I got a very basic education at the University of York I think it was a general BA, I then bought myself a one-way ticket and off I went to Milan. I had cut out some addresses from some beautiful magazines of top agencies and said, I'm going to go try and see what happens. And that's exactly what I did. And so I arrived in Milan and went straight from the airport with these addresses and a taxi to the first address I had. And luckily, they felt sorry for me and helped house me. And they cut off my long hair. I went into a very short haircut. And frankly, within a very short time, I started to work in the industry. So things worked out in a way that was really wonderful that way. In terms of the industry, I always felt that I had the ability to come and go as I pleased. And even at that time, at one point, I was scouted to Paris by a very top agency. It was called Karen's, and it was Jean-Luc Brunel, I believe was his name, which later we found out was one of the primary suspects or organized leaders with Epstein.
Oh, really?
Yes. And so when I was scouted to Paris, I remember by Jean-Luc, I remember being in Paris maybe a short time, perhaps a couple of weeks only, and I started to see things that were appalling to me and frightening. And because of my nature and because of having this attitude of always staying true to myself, I got on a midnight train out of Paris to get away from him and get away from the scene. And I took off to Hamburg, Germany, where I relocated myself and started to work as a model. So this attitude of always staying true to myself and making decisions that were correct started at a very young age, because that's exactly how I was raised, by a mother who said, stay true to yourself and make sure that you're doing exactly what you want to be doing. So this always reflects back to the teachings of my foundational family rules that my parents imparted on me, and teachings, frankly. So, yeah. So I would say to you that one of the things that is important today is that when I look on the internet and I look at all of these YouTubers talking about usually these guys who are in their 30s, and they are trying to instruct women how to behave. Don't chase a guy. 5 texts to get him to respond, like so on and so forth. And for me, I find it quite appalling and surprising that women buy into this. These guys are making substantial livings by imparting information and really going off of the insecurities of women. And I say to all of that, like, what is this 30-year-old guy going to tell me of how to behave in a relationship? I mean, you need to listen to yourself and be true to yourself.
So I interviewed a female in her 30s who runs a blog about femininity, and she said that men want to pursue and females want to be pursued.
Right. So I would say to you that I would feel, you're asking me. So my opinion is that I'm not interested in chasing anybody, and I'm not interested in being chased. I believe that if I have an interest in someone, that I specifically will say I have an interest in getting to know you, and if that individual, and I'm very open and upfront about that. There is no game playing. I just simply state that. And if this individual is interested, then they are going to respond or they're not. I'm not going to sit there on my phone saying, I haven't heard from him. Where is he 5 days later? I don't care. It's
So
frank.
is this a different attitude that you think that people in our age category, your age category, for females should have, or is this something that you think is appropriate for everybody?
I think it's appropriate for everybody. I don't think that this idea that chasing one another, what is that all about? I mean, why are we not just talking? When I talk about emotional evolvement, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's about having an honest communication with somebody. It's not about playing, chasing, and running. I don't believe in that. State your case and let the other person come forward. Give them the ability. Communicate. We need to communicate with one another if we're going to lay the groundwork of some kind of a good foundation. There is no relationship if there's no foundation. And I think that you were the one who actually questioned me. So are you going on dates? What are you doing? So the reality is I believe in organic meetings. I'm not somebody who's going to sit there on my app for hours at night scrolling at these guys. I'm not interested. I have too many interesting things to do with my life and my evenings to be sitting there scrolling.
And do you think that a lot of other people that are sort of in your age category are spending their whole time sort of looking for and swiping and
I do.
And that's not what you'd recommend?
No, I just think that you need to get on. You're putting too much pressure on yourself. I think get on with your life. Do the things that you want to do, like whether you're playing tennis or even going for a walk or whatever your interests might be, is where you're going to find somebody who has this common interests. And within those common interests, hopefully you'll find somebody with common goals and those foundational goals. So I believe in organic. Yeah, that's what I think. And I think that if it's not today, it's tomorrow. Look at, I have a girlfriend. She's in her 70s. Very successful woman. She had a tremendous career. And she found herself single in her 60s. And I will tell you that she did some dating, but it was all within, the community. Somebody would introduce her, or whether it would be philanthropically at a charity event, she would meet gentlemen, common goals, interests. And I will tell you that she's mid-70s now, met the love of her life, got married, and is having an amazing life.
Got married in her 70s.
Yes. And so, it's about chilling about it and enjoying your life. You're going to meet somebody. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I believe that in every ounce of my life, relationships, business, whatever it is, nothing passes you by that is not meant to be for you. And if you can just think of that and really believe that, then you just relax into your life and it'll happen when it's supposed to happen or not. Maybe it's not supposed to happen. I don't know that.
No, you had said earlier that you had described this the female of, I guess, that was born in the 50s or something like this, that didn't have a lot of skills, potentially had spent most of their life with the male as the provider, now finding themselves divorced or widowed. And that the men her age were looking for people that are 10 or 20 years younger.
That's correct.
Is that a problem, or is that okay?
So, I think it is a problem. I think that, men and women have different needs, frankly. Women who are in their 50s and 60s are a lot more cautious about re-engaging in relationships. Men are a little bit different. They have a little checklist, and if it works, that checklist, they are happy to re-engage a lot quicker than women are. So the reality is that men are typically going for much younger women. This is not something that I think is a problem, really. Not for me, but this is what women are imparting to me. They're saying it's a problem, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it as, we bring a great deal of experience with us in our age category. And I look for somebody who's age appropriate to me, who was born in my era within 5 years, this way or that way. I don't want to be with somebody who's 10 or 15 years older than me, and certainly not the other way. I want to be with somebody who was growing up at the same time that I was. It gives automatically we have a commonality because we grew up at the same time. Our foods, our music, our tastes, our fashion. We have something that is common right off to start with. So, but it is true that especially men who have some wealth, especially, they are going for much younger. That's for sure. Whether I think it's a problem, it isn't for me. I don't look at it that way, but women do complain of that. That's true.
If that's what men are looking for, they're looking for not necessarily intelligence, success, cultural similarities, but or not cultural, but sort of generational similarities, cultural similarities, I guess is what I'm thinking about. But just beauty, youthfulness.
Youthfulness. Yeah, recapturing perhaps some youthfulness that they themselves have lost, feeling alive and youthful again. A lot of times I would say that that's true. Absolutely. But
Okay,
I will tell you something. Just let me interrupt for a second, because I know of stories, of men who are extremely wealthy who fell in love with the waitress at some bar that they were going to, married, and, only to come home and find them having affairs with guys their own age. Because the body wants what the body wants, the mind wants what it wants. And just because you have all this money doesn't mean that it's going to work. It's the difference of the age that has actually separated what that older guy had hoped would come together in the youthfulness doesn't actually often work. It does work sometimes, but not often.
Okay, so if you had a friend, a male friend in your circle that that he introduced you to the 25-year younger waitress, what would you tell him?
Good luck. Honestly, that's what I would say. If it works, call me in a few years and we'll talk about it over a mocktail.
Okay, so you had sent me a list of sort of things that you I don't know if these are rules, but sort of issues, and age appropriateness and why is one of them. And so what you're saying is 5 years plus or minus, but not much more than that.
That's correct. I really do feel that way. I just think that we have so much more in common right off the bat.
Okay. The next thing you said is the power to say no, which I found interesting. And I want to come back and talk a little bit about that after we take a break for 2 minutes for some messages. Stay with us, everyone. This is an interesting, and I think it's an important conversation because, Hannah has lived an interesting life and is continuing to live an interesting life and has got a lot of good advice for us. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm having a really interesting conversation about relationships, particularly relationships in sort of middle age with Hanya Kizemchuk. She's a mature model. And before I go on back to one of the things that you talked about, power to say no, that we were going to talk about, I've got to ask you about your confidence, because it's incredible that someone in their 40s, 50s, let alone their 60s, is comfortable not bearing all, but bearing almost all on the runway. Where did you get this confidence from?
Well, I think that part of what you're seeing is an expression of creative artism. It's part of photography. It's part of what I love about the fashion industry. It allows me to explore my femaleness, my sensuality. And it does so, I hope, in a way that is always tasteful. I love to be able to show that in my age, I feel incredibly sexy, attractive, and that I'm showing that we should all feel a bit of that. And it's important for me to show that so that women might feel a bit of that positivity again. Oftentimes, as we age, we start to shy away. And look at, I'm not trying to pretend that I am in the condition of some 30-year-old or some 20-year-old. There's no way. But I am showing that in my middle age and in my form of beauty, whatever that is to me, that I'm still holding my own and saying, you know, I appreciate the 20 and the 30 and the 40-year-old. I do. I get it. We're living in a youth-obsessed, wealth-obsessed world. So I get that. But I'm saying, look, we women, we still feel good and look good. And here I am, and I'm showing you that it's okay to show a side that oftentimes women are shy to do. And that's what that is all about.
Hanya, for those on the radio, please describe the picture that we're talking about. This is a picture of you.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite photographers in Toronto. And my friend, Marette Kendra, designer, she made these gorgeous gloves, fingerless gloves, all beaded. And the point was to show those gloves on a nude body. Of course, my arms are crossed over my breasts so that none of that shows. But of course, you know that I'm standing there nude, covering myself appropriately and standing there in all of my beauty and showing these gloves. That is the photograph, and it went on to win some awards for the photographer, in fact.
And the comment that a lot of people would make looking at this is that you're so proud with your silver hair.
Of course. I am. I earned it. You know, I've been gray since I'm 40, and I have always, I love that. I love the look before even this gray power became powerful. So, and people will often say, I've had comments, well, why don't you color your hair? You would look so much younger. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's your opinion. I appreciate your opinion always, but I think I'm just going to go with that natural gray hair of mine.
Well, it's a beautiful picture, and it
Thank
does
you so
show
much.
Incredible confidence. So let's come back to these lessons or comments that you wanted to make. And one of them was the power to say no. Tell me what that is and why it's so important.
I think that being the age that I'm at, and talking about confidence, further confidence, is the ability just to say no. You know, life has brought a lot of experiences. And as we age, we shouldn't be ashamed of that. We should be holding that proud. I mean, if you go to a job and you have a great deal of experience, that is a plus. So why wouldn't that be a plus as we're aging as a woman or as a man? You know, your experience is what enables you to say yes and no. And certainly as I have progressed in age, it has enabled me to say no. If I'm, for example, a very small example, I was asked to do a fashion show. They wanted me to walk on the runway in a bikini, and I said, no, no, thank you. So it's the power of no in a very small way, but it is empowering for a woman just to say, no, I'm not comfortable doing that. I'm not going to do it. And so the answer is no. And oftentimes my generation of women are often saying yes. We were raised to say yes all our lives, yes. And what I learned over my entire life is to say no, including and going all the way back to when I ran from Paris. And I said, no, I'm not going to be treated like that. I'm out of here. Girls are disappearing. You're drugging them. I'm out of here. No. So it started way back when, and it still continues.
And again, is this something that you think is appropriate for people in your age category or for everybody?
For everybody. I think this has nothing to do with age. I think this has to do with imparting my experience in life. And it is to show that it's okay to say no, to stand up and say no. We wouldn't have had all of this Me Too movement if women would have simply said no. So I think that's important.
I think this is really kind of interesting. A lot of the suggestions that you've got for people in regards to, what they should be thinking about. And again, whether it's people in their middle age or at whatever age, is this something that you think has evolved over time, or have you always had these beliefs?
I've always had these beliefs. I've always been a bit of a renegade because in my time, that was not the typical. I've always felt a bit of being a lone wolf, but I have seen that finally today's generation is actually more so open to this. And when you ask, then I have to be honest and say I've always been my own lone wolf. I've always behaved in a way that was authentic to me. And it wasn't always positively understood. So, in the past, it might have been understood as someone who is being difficult or somebody who is trying to cause an issue. That was never the case. The case was simply that, I have my own goals and my boundaries and my own self-respect, and they are not crossed.
Do you think this is something that everybody can practice, or are you unique? You're obviously, very fit and attractive and glamorous in whatever age you are. If you weren't so fit and attractive and glamorous, would you still be able to have this attitude?
100%. Because the attitude is about what is going to make you happy inside. I mean, we are looking, of course, at the visuals here of mine. So, yes, I am somebody who is fit. I take it very seriously. Fitness and my diet and my skincare program is something that is important to me, but I'm also in the fashion industry. But even if I were not, I wasn't in the fashion industry 10 years ago when I was in land development. The idea was the same. Absolutely.
What would you like to tell your 20-year-old self if you had that chance?
I think that the biggest difference today from my 20-year-old self is that I would say, don't worry about it. It's going to work out. You can handle it. It's going to happen the way it's going to happen. So I would take the worry aspect out of it, out of the equation. When you're young and inexperienced, I was often worried as a worrywart. That is the biggest difference. So I would relax into it just a little bit more and say, it's going to be okay, Hanya. You're going to make it. You can do this.
What would you like to tell other people in your age category?
I say, live your life. Don't be so hard on yourself. Enjoy what's in front of you right now. Don't take away from the moment. Get off your phones and enjoy what's happening in this moment right now, because that's what counts right now. Your family, your children, your own life. Giving back is a very big deal for me. Absolutely. To give back is the biggest joy in many ways once we are older and seniors. It gives a great deal of satisfaction to be able to add to somebody else's life, for sure.
This has been a really interesting conversation. And I think that you've got a lot of very helpful and interesting comments to give to people. You mentioned to me that you wanted to potentially create a podcast about sort of relationships and fitness and health and things like that. Why?
What I see happening is that there is a great deal of engagement between women who are younger and older. So from the younger ladies, what I'm hearing is that thank God you came around, because we were afraid that as we age, we would disappear. And we see you thriving, and that makes us feel as though there is some kind of a future for us. So I think that that is a part of a very big discussion. And I think that for women of my own age, they want to hear how I'm living my life. They want to, I get asked all the time, skincare, you know, how do you keep your body? They want to know my relationships. They want to know all of that.
Why? Why do they want to know all this?
Because a lot of times people are feeling a little bit lost or insecure in their aging process. And they look to me and they see that I'm embracing it. I'm not saying it's easy all the time. For every yes in the industry, I get 10 no's. So, you know, that can be daunting as well. But at the end of the day, I have a very positive attitude about aging. I feel good about aging. I feel good about where I am. And frankly, I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy that I can say I am aging because, you know, I have lost friends along the way. So let's be clear about that. We are here and we're alive. As far as I know, I'm healthy. And if I was struggling with health, I would still say I'm alive. So let's make this great. Let's make this a great day.
And I guess the key to this conversation and your issue of relationships is that you're happy being single. You don't feel like you're defined by your relationship, by having to have a man in your life, and you're telling other people that they should be happy that way too. Is that the case?
Yeah, enjoy your life. Don't put the pressure on. Yeah, for sure.
Enjoy your life. Don't put the pressure on. Good adage. We're going to take a final break and come back with some concluding comments with Hanya Kizemchuk in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I've had a really enjoyable conversation. I think it's a really educational conversation for me and for others with Hanya Kizemchuk, who describes herself as a mature model. I think she's a wonderful young lady, and it's been interesting chatting about some of her lessons learned through her life. Hanya, thank you so much for this conversation. I wonder, I saw this post that you made on Instagram, and I wonder if you could review with us what your beliefs are.
Of course. Thank you. Anyway, thank you so much, Brian, by the way, for having me. So, okay, so this is something that I posted on Instagram. So stress is fear. So when you're feeling fearful, that is imparting stress on you. So understand what is happening to you during these stressful moments. Understand that it's a fear. So you need to go inside of yourself and say, what am I fearing? What is it? So I think that understanding that stress relates to fear is important. My second point is our breath is the most important substance in our lives. It's so basic. Breathe, take a breath. Don't go beyond that. All you actually own is this breath. It's not even the next breath. It's this one right now between us, between me and my body. It's to breathe. It's this breath. That's all you own. Never mind all the other stuff. Get down to basics and understand that point. My third point, trust life and stress will fall away. This goes back to what I was saying to you about nothing passes you by that is not meant to be. That is my way of saying trust life. When you really get that, then you can relax into what is happening, because you know and you trust that the stress will fall away in your life. So let the action happen. Let life happen. It will happen the way it's supposed to happen. And if something happens in the negative, then there's a lesson in that. And that was meant to be as well. You need to get that.
Number 4.
Do not fear life. Go for it. Don't live life in fear. Live life with joy.
Number 5.
Goal, yes. See, inner goal is joy, harmony, and peace. Number 6, every problem can be solved. Absolutely. Learn from the discord. Well, I've already handled that one.
and you continued, know that you are productive. Expressing gratitude for what you have enables you to grow. Stop bitching. You can do this. Take 10 minutes out of your day to settle yourself by simply listening to your breath. Your breath is all that you own in this exact moment. You are exactly where you need to be in this very moment, and refuse to be limited by others and their ways of thinking. Let them own that, and you own yours. You can do this. What a wonderful list of suggestions for people. And, I think to summarize the conversation, it was really interesting that you started up by saying that people ask you all the time why you're single, and that you wanted to answer this, and that you wanted to talk about what's wrong with the idea of the Cinderella concept, and how your mother told you that it was not what you should have as your objective in life, that you had common goals amongst your parents growing up, that they wanted you to be successful and have an education in your own right, that your mother gave you advice right away, that relationships were 50-50, that you wanted to earn your own money, that gave you power and allowed you to be authentic, that you now are living this single life in a happy bubble on an island, that you believe in age appropriateness, which is a little bit interesting, that you've got the power to say no, that you think that men that are making careers out of insecurities of women are teaching us some incorrect things, that you think dating apps are a waste of time and people spend way too much time in this, and that it's all about choice, not need. And that's our show, and it'll be a great show. What a wonderful list of suggestions. And I got to tell you, you are a very inspirational person, and it's been a pleasure of mine to meet you and get to know you. And I'm going to have to think about some of the things that you've said, because I think some of the suggestions apply to me in my own life. And so I really appreciate you reaching out, wanting to share your suggestions. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. It's been really great. Thank you.
Well, that's our show for tonight. I thank you all for joining us. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca, even from Naples, Florida, where Hanya is. And you can get all my podcasts and videocasts on my website, briancrombie.com. And I guess I want to make a final comment, and that is that I think relationships are wonderful. I think that, there's this line, Hanya, about people are in our life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I think that too often people define successful relationships only the ones that are a lifetime. And with 57% or whatever it is of people that end up getting divorced, and it's supposedly be even a higher percentage with second marriages and third marriages, and the fact that we are dating and swiping left or right if we're on dating apps, and that we're meeting lots of people, to think that every relationship you're going to have is forever is probably very idealistic and maybe actually inappropriate because it sets up expectations that are unreal. But thinking that relationships can be there for either a season, i.e. a while, and or a reason such that you can learn something and you become a better person. And that rather than being upset that that relationship is over, you can actually be thankful that you had that experience, that you learned golf, you learned dance, you learned wine, you learned some other experience.
Exactly.
Or you learned things that you didn't like, which is probably also as equally beneficial. I think is a healthy comment, a healthy belief. Anyway, that's my take on it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.